Good evening. I'm going to open the October 9th meeting of the Newton Planning Board, and we'll start with this salute to the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First item on the agenda is the continued public hearing for Father and Son Realty Trust, Todd Fitzgerald, 5-lot subdivision, Courierville, map 15, block 2, lot 1-1. Mr. Quintel, you have some more information for us?
Yes, thank you. Just as a brief review, this property is on Courierville Road, and it was a recent subdivision from the homestead that was subdivided off, and this is all vacant land. So the proposal is to create these 5 lots. So we've done the perimeter survey, identified the edge of wetlands, soil map, test pits, standard things that need to be done for creating the subdivision for the property. We have sent in the plans to the state and got state approval number, and we put that approval number on the plan. At the last meeting, we talked a lot about the grading and drainage along the edge of the road, and how the road is narrow, and someday that there might need to be a widening of the road. So Mr. Fitzgerald said that it would be okay if we put an easement across on the front. So there's a note right there with a line that says 15-foot easement all the way across the front of the property on each of the lots, so that in the future, if the town decides to widen the road, they'd have the ability to cut the trees, cut the grades, and do whatever drainage needs to be done along the edge of the road and widen the road if they chose to do that. So the other thing that we did was, in doing that, there were some of these 4K areas, a couple of these that were right close to where that easement was going to go. So we just shifted those back on the plan. So we still within the test pit areas. So it's just a move in the 4K areas back. And technically, when we do the septic system designs for those, the septic systems are usually fairly close to the house anyways, so they would be back further away from the frontage of the road, and we would try to do that. The other thing we talked about drainage for the roadway was that each of these lots are a little bit lower than the street, and there's bankings along the edge of the street, and so when the driveways get cut in and get put in, that basically we're saying how the driveways would slope away from the street, and any water from the edge of the road would go toward the driveways. So I got a detail on the top of the page here that shows how the edge of the road is, and the grade coming off the edge of the road would be at least a 2 or 3% pitch away from the road, and that way there, any runoff from the road or the edge of the road where all the driveways are, and each of the 5 driveways, so any of the drainage along these roadways is a place where the water can drain on that side of the road. So the other thing we talked about was, as far as the road itself, the improvements for the road, and we talked about graveling the road. We made the proposal last meeting to add another 6 inches of gravel over the whole road. And Mr. Fitzgerald did get proposals for doing 6 inches of gravel for the full width across the frontage of this property in the roadway. And so I sent an email. You can see the email that I have given to the board members regarding the that, and I can briefly read it for the record and any of the butters that are here and anybody watching. And it said, regarding the Fitzgerald Subdivision off Courierville Road in Newton, there are 3 bids that have been submitted, and grading and compaction of 400 tons of crushed asphalt along the frontage section of this property. And I had just spoken with the road agent, Mike Pavero. He believes this is to be acceptable to him. The bids are $10,000 and less, so we will be requesting that the planning board accept a $10,000 bond to be put in place as a condition of approval for off-site improvements. Another condition will be a bond in the amount of $5,000 to cover the cost for additional grading of the road resulting from extra traffic during the construction of these lots. The plans will be modified to show a 15-foot wide grading and drainage easement across the frontage, which I just talked about, and allow the town, which I had just talked about, of cutting the trees and putting in the swale. And also, I mentioned to him also about the driveways being cut in. And regarding the issue of future drainage of the puddle that's across the street on the town property, which is approximately in this area here, right at the, right above where it says Courierville, right near the end of the stone wall. And if you look at the distance from there to, we talked about putting an easement down these property lines, and it's quite a long distance to be able to put a drain pipe down those property lines. It's a lot shorter to put a pipe either across the road and down this way, because within a couple hundred feet, it slopes off significantly right there. So to go from here to there is only a couple hundred feet versus going from here and down and along the property line, 300 to 400 feet. So it would be more economical to do it along the edge of the roadway than it would be down the property line. Doesn't really matter. Either way, it could be done. But I do believe that that's the best approach to take and best solution, and the easement along the frontage will provide enough space adequate for doing that drainage along the edge of the road if need be. And I asked Mike, let me know if you believe these solutions solves the concerns of the planning board. So I haven't heard back from him, but that's certainly something that I'm sure he'd be willing to send a memo or an email to the town for that. So I think that kind of covers what we had talked about at the last meeting as far as requirements for the subdivision. Obviously, we would need to provide a Mylar and get the surveyor to put his final stamps on this plan here, which he's already done on the plan that went to the state, so it's just a matter of putting his stamp on this, and for this survey and soils, along with my stamps. And setting the bounds, obviously, is another thing that we typically do for conditions. So I think with that, I guess I can answer any of the questions that the board has.
The board have any questions?
One minor thing, you missed the typo that I pointed out last time.
You know, that was a test. That was a test, Roger. And so I certainly will do that.
Yeah, with the smaller plans, it's really hard to see.
Well, see, like I said, it was a test, and you passed. Sorry about that, Roger. I didn't mean to ignore that, but I'm glad you brought it up.
It's a very minor point.
Yeah.
Sandra, did you have anything?
Oh, I don't know, it's not particularly about this, but I was just wondering, the access to that property would be either, Maple Avenue or Dugway Road?
Could be either, both are public.
Yeah, I was just wondering
Okay.
about use on those two roads.
Okay. Anything? Okay. Conservation?
Thank you, Tricia McCarthy, Conservation. So Conservation had a public meeting on Thursday night, and there's a few things that when we were here last meeting, was discussed, and some of it Dennis actually commented on. We just want a couple of things. We would like, first of all, we don't have a copy of the updated report. Dennis did give us one at our last meeting, but I think it was his copy. Conservation didn't receive a copy. That's number one. Conservation would like a delineation report on lot 1-4 and 1-5. It is a wetland area. We spoke to Dennis about this after the meeting last week, so hopefully that's something that he can get to us. The road runoff to go to the driveway, so he just discussed that, that's fine. Would like an erosion control along the limit of the work area, because there is a lot of wetlands, especially in the back and down at the end of the road, the Dugway end. We request not to clear more than is needed in order to prevent runoff and a good stormwater management or stormwater control. Dennis mentioned the buffer along the subdivision, and that will probably be mentioned on the plans, but we would like it on the plans. And what else did we discuss? And we're not sure if this if this is necessary, maybe Jennifer can comment on this. Because stormwater management, although the states can do their own thing, because it's a federal requirement, do we have the right to waive the stormwater management plan, or is it because it's not going into US waters that we don't need one? But if that's being said, was a notice of intent filed, and if so, can we have a copy?
So they are not proposing to actually disturb the wetlands. And as far as stormwater, they are not directly discharging into any waters of the US.
But the. It's an acre, right. But actually, the new plans on the stormwater management does say a large parcel, so even though it's individual plans, if the whole entity is more than an acre, then a notice of intent should be filed, but they may tell you that because it doesn't drain into US waters, so we get that part, but we just didn't know, in the grand scheme of things, since you're talking about stormwater management and we talk about it, we want to all be on the same page. And actually, what brought it up was the last fellow that was at this meeting. No, he came to our meeting, and we thought he was going to be here tonight, and some of what's happening with him on South Main Street also applies to this particular subdivision as far as stormwater management and NOI. So, I guess that's it. I think we've covered most of it, and Dennis can get us that report, the delineation report of lot 1-4 and 1-5, because it is down near the wetlands area near the Dugway Road, which is really bad.
I have a question. Can you repeat what you said about the erosion control?
Yes, so just, we'd like erosion control along the limit of the work area. Some of that work area might be in the back, and this is not new to Todd, so I'm sure he's familiar with this, but we discussed it at our meeting and wanted it documented.
Okay. Thank you.
Is that it, Nancy? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jen, could the information from that Conservation is asking, could that be
That could be
in
a
the
condition
condition?
of approval.
And all of these other things can be in the conditions?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Quintel.
So, copy of the plans, I don't have any problem with that. I have extra full-size copies here, if you want. The delineation report, which is, can be done by the soil scientist who identifies edge of wetlands. He certainly can provide that. Erosion control is standard. Anytime we do excavation type of work anywhere within 100 feet of wetlands, we obviously would put in erosion control, whether it be a silt sock or silt fence or silt sock.
Plastic netting, though, don't use plastic netting, right, on erosion control?
Well, erosion control, we're talking about two things really, because erosion control is something you lay flat on the ground to prevent, on bare ground, to prevent erosion. But if you put silt fence along the edge of the work, that traps any sediments that could run off. So it's really sediment control that I think we're talking about. Okay, that's really to prevent sediments from going any further than the limits of the excavation. So, but that's typically done when you're within 100 feet, and that's certainly something that we can agree to on that. Clearing not more than is necessary, that's really up to Mr. Fitzgerald. I don't know how I can address that. That's typically done by, trees. We've already testified to the fact there's a lot of the trees that are dead there. There's a lot of trees that are big, and if they're anywhere near the homes and everything that could damage the homes, obviously they would have to come down. But really, that's up to Mr. Fitzgerald and working with his contractor on that. Buffer plans, I'm not sure what I understand about buffer plans. Buffer on the plan.
The 15-foot, when we had our meeting, we hadn't met yet, we didn't know what that is.
Right, it's the 15-foot buffer, okay, so we've already done that.
Yep.
And a federal NOI, that certainly can be done if necessary on that, that's not a problem. As far as stormwater management, we've already talked about that, and we have a waiver for that.
Okay. Anybody have anything else to say? Yes, Jen?
As far as any NOI that might be required, that gets covered under your standard condition of any state, federal, or local permit be received. That would be part of that. While not specifically called out, it would fall under that condition. That's a standard approval. As far as a sort of minimal disturbance, that's very hard to enforce as a condition. If that's something you want to do, then you need to have it actually very clearly drawn on the plan where the limits of disturbance should be. But again, it's very hard to enforce. There is still forestry and selective cut that can still be done.
Right.
As far as erosion, you can put that as a note. It would be typical practice, but it could be noted on the plan.
Sediment control and erosion?
That best management practices for erosion and sediment control be utilized. Again, that's fairly difficult to enforce, but just to make sure it is called out.
Right. Okay. No more questions?
I didn't want to see that I missed the conservation meeting. I was on vacation, sorry. The delineation report that you want, would it to get it before or as a condition? Like it's just a report you want to see, or you'd want to make a different decision depending on what it says?
Well, we just want to understand what those last two are. It says it doesn't, it says wetlands, but it doesn't say what type. Much wetlands.
A delineation report is generally provided when asked to justify where they drew the line. As far as soil mapping that whole area, I mean, it's wetlands, it's the type of wetlands, whether it's poorly drained or very poorly drained, doesn't really matter. We're not counting that as part of the lot area. If you look at the third page for what we have done for lot calculations, we don't even take that into consideration. So it's an area that's poorly drained or very poorly drained soil that we're just leaving it and not utilizing that, and it's not necessary to identify it because we're proving that we have enough upland on the lots to meet the requirements of what the subdivision regulations say. So to identify specifically what that whole area is and define what's poorly versus very poorly, I mean, it would take a lot of work to go out there, cutting line and cutting, measuring, and it's probably going to do a lot of more disturbance than just leaving it the way it is. So, I mean, if you want a delineation report, it's only going to be for the line of where the line, what they use to determine where the line is. And that's clearly shown on the plan of where the line is. So whether that's necessary or not, that's, up to you.
The concern might be that you say you're gonna leave it alone, but then they cut trees in that area. and
Well, it's still-
drainage,
it's still
right,
with-
It's still like a flooded area now, now your water's gonna flow quicker, so it might flood more, maybe.
Well,
that's
it's
concern.
It's still within the wetland rules and regulations that you can cut trees in the wetlands as long as you don't disturb the surface or don't pull out stumps which disturb the surface. So that's within the rules and regulations, whether it's part of the subdivision or whether it's part of the work that someone who buys that lot could say, I'd like to cut some of these trees and maybe sell a wood or whatever, so they still have the right to do that, whether it's part of the subdivision or it's not part of the subdivision. So as long as they don't disturb the surface of the ground or pull out stumps or anything like that, it's within the rules, wetland rules of the state.
Are you okay with Mr. Quintel's explanation that you don't need that delineation report now? Okay. Oh, you still do want that report? Okay. Yeah, okay, so that'll be okay, okay. Well, since somebody want to make a motion to approve this? Or do you want me to do that and I will list the conditions?
My problem with this development is not going to get addressed, so I'm not going there.
Okay,
I mean, to me, the road is just inadequate, and that hasn't been addressed, and it's not going to be, so.
okay. Well then, I will make a motion to conditionally approve this 5-lot subdivision, map 15, block 2, lot 1-1, with the following conditions. They will provide a Mylar with stamps. They will set the bounds. They will provide a delineation report for lot 1-4 and 1-5. Provide the notice of intent to DES.
Barb, can I recommend instead of that specific condition that it just be that all federal, state, and local permits are received?
I got you.
Then
All
it
right.
just covers everything. I mean, they've already gotten
Okay.
everything from the state at this
Alright.
point, but
Okay. Okay, all federal and state permits be acquired. And that $10,000 bond or letter of credit, whichever it is that the town recommends, for off-site improvement, and $5,000 bond or letter of credit to cover the additional grading. Did I get everything?
if you wanted to have an erosion and sediment control plan be noted.
Yes.
But
and
again,
that's not-
it's
won't-
difficult to enforce.
I can put a note on the plan.
Right, yes, if you would,
Sediment control shall be placed, at the limit of construction.
right, if you would put that note on the plan, that would be great. You got it? Okay. Do I have a second? I made the motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All those in
Do we
favor?
get discussion first?
Okay, discussion?
I just
Sure.
had a question about the road bond and stuff. So it might be too late, but like during the time of the construction, I have no idea how long he's gonna take to build these. But like if the road disintegrates, are we gonna, like who will make it a little better for the people that live there in
That's
between?
what that
Well, it doesn't
bond
say
is
how
for.
many times. It just says, like I don't know if he's gonna build a house now, build a house later, build a house all at once. But like if the road in between gets, like it doesn't say
believe
how
that
they're gonna
that's what that
disperse this.
Bond is for, and if it gets bad enough that he uses this all up, the town may come back and ask him to post some more.
So it would be up to Mike Pavero to say, I'm going out there and grade the road because it's really bad?
Yes.
And I'm going to use this money? I just want to understand
Right,
how this
yeah.
is working. Okay.
Right.
And then if we need more, we could get more.
It's my understanding that he does grade it like 2 or 3 times a year.
Right,
So over the next couple of years, that he has to do it maybe another once or twice during the year. That's what that 5,000 is for. And obviously, if he needs more, it'd be up to Mr. Fitzgerald to make sure that gets taken care of.
sure. You look like you still have a question.
Well, I know, I was just thinking.
Plus, the bond gets held until the
Right,
last house is
yeah, I
done.
just wanted to make sure.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed?
Motion fails. So, someone can motion to not approve. Someone can make a motion to continue. If you do that, I would recommend if there is other information that you would like brought forth, that you specify what that may be. So it's either not approve, someone else give a motion with different conditions, or you can continue it. Those are
When did we accept jurisdiction?
About,
about a month ago.
yeah, no,
Well, we got plenty of time.
no, we don't really have plenty of time.
Well,
We got 65 days, so we got another month.
that is true. You have approximately a month. I'd
But-
have to go back and count.
But your concern about the whole road is not going to be fixed by then.
Yeah, I quite realize that.
You can continue without, if you need further time to consider, my just suggestion is that if you continue,
I would like to motion to continue this until we have more people on the board. We have 3 people that are absent tonight.
Do we have a quorum though?
you do have a
We
quorum.
have a quorum, but, so you're making a motion to continue till
Till the next meeting.
more? yeah. What's the date?
November. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm a month ahead of myself.
No, it's 9th, so
Yeah.
14, 23rd.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll second the motion to continue.
okay. All those in favor?
All right.
Okay. So it's continued until the 23rd of October.
Is there any other information that the board would like before that meeting?
I don't think so.
Actually, though, I don't see any problem with your estimates for the bonds. Typically, we get those from our engineer rather than yours.
And the road agent.
Right.
And that's fine, I mean.
Yeah, right,
I'm looking for a response from him anyways. I
Right.
didn't
Right.
get it, and I can't force him to
Right,
make
yeah,
a
but
written
I mean,
response.
you asked what else needs to happen, or what should happen. And I think that's one of the things that should happen, is we should get
Right,
confirmation of those numbers from.
right. I will have Gail, we'll send him a letter and ask him for his official letter
Yeah,
saying that these
right, yeah,
bonding
like I
numbers,
said,
that he agrees with these.
That isn't a real problem.
I'd like to
but-
think that that would make you comfortable, I would think.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all, and then, everything we talked about.
Yeah.
Jen?
This is just, would a site walk help or hurt?
I went driving by there today.
I mean, it's a little unusual in that the main concern, at least that is the road, so the ability to simply drive down the road, you're not really looking at the site per se.
You're right, I mean, I don't think, my concerns aren't,
Okay,
I don't think would be
it's
addressed more
just a
by
suggestion.
walking through the woods, but I went and looked at it again today, just,
My concerns are his, I think it's premature to do that whole large thing all at once, considering,
Okay, I do
area
just
it's
have to
in.
remind you, though, that it complies with all of the all the conditions of the ordinance. So. Okay, all right, so we are continued until October 23rd. Thank you. And you'll send a letter to Mike and get him, like, an official. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay, great, thanks. Yeah, you can take a big one for the file. Yeah, right.
Here's There's some extra ones for the people that aren't here.
Okay. Okay. You want to go over the stormwater management?
I'm happy to. I don't know if it makes a difference because there's only 4 members here.
Oh, you're right. We
I
should.
mean, I can go through this with you guys
No, but
briefly.
you're right, though. It makes sense to do this when everybody else is here, too. So let's continue the stormwater management to review this until either the 23rd or the meeting after that, a future meeting.
Okay. I won't be here for that first November meeting, but
Okay, so we'll just, whenever we don't have a full plate.
And this isn't an ordinance, so even.
this is not
so-
beholden,
so-
it's not
so
beholden to town meeting.
We're not,
No, we're
time-wise,
not working
we're
on
not
that.
up against anything time-wise.
That said, if there are any ordinance changes, that even minor, and at this point, minor is actually better, that
Right.
folks are very concerned with, or even minor things that you feel should be tweaked or clarified,
This is the time to
now
do
is
it.
we're starting to get towards the end of time to do it, because we
That's
need to
right.
have the first hearing to do that by at least the middle of December, so we need to be discussing it in November at the
Okay.
latest, so.
So if you know of anything that you feel like needs to be tweaked in the ordinances, okay?
Definitions in the past couple of years that have bothered you, the way something's worded, clarification on home occupancy, accessory dwellings, anything like that.
Okay, great. Thank you for the reminder.
And I
Okay.
say that to the Conservation Commission if they wanted to bring anything forth as well.
And you said that you would come to environments, because we talk about this all the time, and we do have concerns with subdivisions. Sorry, I should be up there.
Okay. I could hear you. All right.
But people at home can't.
Oh, well, okay, yeah, thank you.
So Conservation would be interested in either having Jennifer come to one of our meetings or have our input. As we move on, and we discussed this pretty heavily at our last meeting, with all the development that's going on in town, there's little things that could possibly be on the stormwater management plan that will help us. We've got road runoff, impervious surfaces that we should be considering, vegetated swales, certain erosion control, like I mentioned, not netting, not plastic netting, maybe having culverts, and had that gentleman that we thought was gonna be here tonight, we were gonna mention it, that culverts, so that we don't flood into the roadway. Instead of culverts ending, they should fan out so the sediment doesn't come back in. These are all things we think possibly should be part of the stormwater management plan, and we would be happy to come or take a look at what you have and just try to participate.
Could I just ask you a question?
Sure.
What's the concern with plastic netting? I don't understand that one.
It's for animals. It's
Oh, so they don't get caught
habitat.
in it.
Yep,
Gotcha.
they get stuck in it, their heads get stuck in it.
Gotcha.
It's an issue, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all right. Thank you.
Typically, the plastic netting is only used during the construction phase of things. It's not
Yeah.
something that would be left in place, but it,
Is it different than like that orange snow fence that we see?
that's effectively the same thing. It's not quite the same,
Yeah,
but
it's
Okay,
very
similar to that.
similar,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
But the,
But the
most
national,
of the silt, the silt control stuff is really solid.
It's still a fine mesh netting. There are different grades of it.
yeah, it's a little bit different.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
But are you looking for something that's going to go in our regulations or something that's going to go in an ordinance?
It's, I guess we want planning board to have the input from conservation, so instead of possibly coming here and then conservation getting involved and saying, oh, wait a minute, that maybe we're preventing people from doing multiple steps, so that if we participate and let you know what conservation thinks, the National Pollutant Elimination System, all of that, what it recommends as best management practices. Many people probably don't know what that is. We're probably even going to put it on the website. It just may help a step instead of making people come time after time after time. That's all.
So there's a couple of different levels going on in that exchange.
Yep.
But the very specifically wetland ordinances, there are things that can be done that better protect water quality, including rivers, wetlands, that deal with culverts. There's a variety of things
Right.
that can be in a in a wetlands ordinance or a water protection ordinance. You guys are talking about doing site plan and subdivision regulations, which is a little bit of a different animal as far as getting it into the books as far as a regulation for stormwater and water protection. That starts, the stormwater regulations start to get into what level of removal for total suspended solids, being sediment and sand, or nitrogen removal or phosphorus removal, that gets at it's called the NIPD's permit. It's the MS4 permit falls under from EPA standpoint and Clean Water Act. It kind of gets into that as far as very specific best management practices. That's some of what you're adopting, but or proposed to adopt, but you're doing it through DES's stormwater regulations and best management practices manual. That's being referenced in what we have been discussing for the past couple of months. So in that, the site-specific controls get built in there that reflect the NIPD's or the MS4 permit.
Right.
As
And
far
probably
as
the CGPs, also the construction, probably those
Yep.
as well.
Yep, it's very similar standards, and
Okay.
in many cases actually stricter.
Okay,
And it gets it at a smaller site than what a construction general permit gets at, which is just at an acre. So we're really talking about projects that are an acre or less.
Yep.
That's generally the scope that the town is now proposed to do better protection on through what we've been talking about. As far as the Conservation Commission commenting on planning board things, I think the regulations will help on the very site-specific. It'll just become the standard.
okay,
The Conservation Commission providing input, though, no matter what regulation gets adopted, should continue to happen. And any application that goes out, all of the departments and boards in town that get notified, please comment.
Right.
Conservation
part of
Commission
the
is
problem
there
is
as advisory.
we're not getting some of it, so.
Okay.
And although this last meeting, we grabbed Dennis and we got a copy of the plans, but, same thing with this fellow that is coming before you, well, I don't want to bring it up. He came to Conservation and he was going to meet with Gail, I think, this week, and we've got some concerns with him. But you're right, we'll give our input as they come in front of us and make it official with a letter or a memo to the
Right.
planning board so that you'll have it.
And we will make sure that you're copied on that from now on.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
fine.
and I think that's just a whole other
Sure.
process that we need to make sure is
Right.
Okay.
functioning as intended.
Do you have a copy of this?
Is that the stormwater management plan?
This is the Southwest Watershed Alliance. This is what we have been, for MS4, which we
No,
have been
that's what
going.
Nancy just said.
I can get you a copy
Can you get
of
me
it.
a
Yeah,
copy?
I think it would be good for you to have a
Yes.
copy, because then you could see if, this is what we're driving towards.
Okay.
For next year, when this becomes mandatory, and this is going to be, if I'm not mistaken, will be our stormwater management thing.
Okay,
This is the basis of it. We're working to tweak it for Newton's own specific goals, but largely
Okay.
it will be that
Right.
document.
is this part of the MS4?
So you are required to have stormwater regulations for during construction and post-construction.
Right.
And illicit discharge. This is compliant with the MS4 permit and
Okay.
actually goes above and beyond.
Oh,
So
good.
what was mentioned in the town's notice of intent for their MS4 permit actually specifically mentions that model.
Okay, good.
ordinance. So,
I only say that because I've been helping do the MS4 since 2007, so I was curious if that was part of it.
yes.
And we
Okay.
did start off that what we're looking at here first is more for commercial. But a
Okay.
lot of these things that, as we see them, can maybe be added to the regular residential too. But we were working
Yes.
on this for
Okay.
commercial to
So
start with.
we've been talking on
Perfect.
the site plan regulations that apply to all non-residential uses in town, and then multifamily, so 3 or more units.
Okay,
And then we had discussed working on the subdivision regulations. Many towns are choosing just to go with any new roads that are constructed and not necessarily the residential lots.
okay,
There are still some ways to deal with impervious surface coverage on residential lots without having it be quite as stringent as the model. But that can be as simply as you can only have X percentage of impervious cover on any given lot. Many
Okay.
towns do it that simply, so
Okay.
25%.
All right,
And that's a way to get at some of the stormwater controls in addition to other things.
perfect.
But I'm still happy to come and talk to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Trish. Okay, next item on the agenda is acceptance of the minutes of September 25th. Roger?
Roger,
Uh,
a spell checker?
I'll make a motion to amend the minutes of September 25th.
Okay, where?
Okay, first of all, first thing in the attendance, Delinsky is an alternate.
Okay,
About the sixth paragraph down that starts with Ms. Estabrook,
yes?
it doesn't show who made the motion and who seconded it and what the vote count was. It just says the motion failed.
You made a motion and it was
Oh,
seconded.
okay, yeah, but the vote count is still missing.
You have to have the whole vote count?
Well, if
Yes.
it's not unanimous, you gotta say what the vote count was.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
or
I'll-
you should at
I'll-
least.
I'll check that.
It may have been unanimous, I'm not sure.
I don't remember either. I'll have to check that. Okay,
That one I just don't remember.
okay.
Getting real picky on page 2. 1, 2, 3, fourth paragraph down, you misspelled my name.
I did.
Should be on speed dial.
Yeah, you got 2 M's in that one. Foot from the bottom.
Wait a minute. Oh, jeez. Sorry, okay.
Page 3, second paragraph.
Okay,
Mr. Hamel asked how wide the town easement was. I think what it should read, it was noted to be 1 rod in either direction from the center line, a total of
Yes.
33 feet.
I don't know what was said, but that's correct as far as how roads work.
Right, that is what Prevero said, and so it's a,
Could you repeat that for me?
okay. So it was noted to be 1 rod in either direction from the center line,
okay,
a total of 33 feet.
okay.
Because it gets real confusing.
How wide the road was.
Yeah, not how wide the road was, how wide the easement is,
The easement's
We-
full.
The right of way.
the right of way.
Right away.
The-
So it's
the-
not an easement though, it's right away.
The right of way, excuse me, yeah,
It's not an easement even.
right,
Right away of
the
the
right
road.
of way. Yeah, all right,
The town right away.
right of way, you're right, so that shouldn't be easement, it should be right of way. Okay. Yeah, another picky one, as long as I was getting picky. On page 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 paragraphs down.
Okay.
It's Mr. Quintel, and not Mrs.
This is,
Quintel.
oh, sorry. Sorry, Dennis.
See, the next page, second paragraph. Would have received a memo from the fire department regarding the, oh, yeah. Should be, the board received a memo from the fire department regarding the office storage space that they utilize on a separate piece of property. It's not the piece that they actually came in to talk about. It's a separate piece. It's a separate parcel. And then 4A, the corrections that I put should have been listed, rather than just, because otherwise no one's going to know what they were.
Okay.
And do we need to list them again? Gail?
I have that at home, so I will list them.
And the right before other, says the board motioned. It should say somebody,
Okay.
and that the vote was unanimous, because I'm pretty sure it was. What?
No, I don't know, I had to check the minutes. Okay,
That's all my changes.
okay. All righty.
Is there a second?
Do we have a second on the amended minutes?
Second.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous, thank you. Okay. Do we have manifests? NEPR,
Abutter notices.
butter notices, $33.75.
Who was that for?
Father and Son Realty.
Okay, move to pay.
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, unanimous.
That was the NEPA.
Yes.
That's the operating budget.
Operating budget, dues for circuit rider and postage stamps, $4,964.
Move to pay. Second.
Whoever you choose, whoever you heard first.
Who had it, Roger, for the first
Yes.
motion?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sandra? Are you? Okay, thank you.
Just on the paperwork. What's that?
Opined.
Opined.
That's a word.
Yes.
That's opined.
Yes.
That is a word.
Actually, you sent me to the dictionary.
Oh, really?
Oh, you didn't know that one.
I did.
In other words, instead of writing in their opinion, you say opined.
Oh.
Okay.
But a lot of books written in the 1800s.
Okay.
Could add that.
Okay. Any correspondence?
There wasn't any, no,
Okay.
no.
No correspondence.
I do have one comment. Went to the law lecture
Okay.
this week and found out one very interesting thing that may help us out.
Probably the same thing Gail
Yeah,
was
right,
telling me about.
exactly. It was basically the regulation, the RSAs do not require that notice for public hearings for site plans and subdivisions did not have to be published in the newspaper. It only says they have to be published if your regulations say they do. And if we change our regulations, then we would have to still send them out certified mail. You'd still have to post them in 2 places. But you wouldn't have, we've got this huge time lag with being able to get them into the newspaper. And we
Right.
don't actually have to have them in the newspaper if we change our regulations.
I would like to see that, unless the RSA changed in the past year.
Because it says published if it's is.
If required by.
If required by a
local-
regulation,
Local regulation?
yeah. Because after the lawyer said so, I did pull out.
Was it Steve Buckley?
No,
No, who was the lawyer who was there? Do you remember?
I would want to run that through NHMA. I'm not disregarding what they
no.
said, but
well, yeah, no, I mean, please look into it further. 'Cause
yeah, that would
You
just,
could find
I
that
think
out.
that would be great if that's the case.
Oh, it
Right,
would,
that's what I'm
because
saying.
then, first of all, it would save us a lot of money.
Yes.
And second of all, it would save us an awful lot of time.
Well, and,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, the money is nice to save, but the time is really the real reason to do it.
Right, because
I'll
right
look
now,
into
somebody
that.
could miss it by like 1 day, and then they have to wait another couple of weeks.
Right, so if you can do some follow-up on that, then we.
I
might-
will look into that because many towns will be very interested in that.
Yeah,
I have never heard that interpretation, nor am I aware of an RSA change, but I don't know all, so might be
Yeah,
completely plausible.
It may not be an RSA change, it may have been just someone finally
Interpreted.
looked at them and said, this is a reasonable interpretation of what it said.
And that's very possible. I'm just,
Yeah, but yeah, if you want to follow up on that, that would be great.
That would be great. So they didn't give you anything in writing, they just told you about that?
I know who, I can look up who did the
Okay.
NHMA, and
Great.
since it's, I'm sorry, who did the law lecture series.
Yeah.
And since NHMA puts that on,
Right,
Steve Buckley is the first person I will call about it.
Right.
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Roger has it.
Of course Roger has it.
And I don't know if Gail or Jim have, but the RSA land use book orders are due on the 19th. You may have already done it, but, okay.
Probably was only because, where would it be in here is the question.
Roger and I got very excited.
I can tell.
Surprised you didn't highlight it in yellow, Roger.
Put a big circle on it.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway.
Tell you what, Roger, if you find it, will you email me the verbiage or reference?
Yeah,
Okay.
and I'll also send you the the RSA is there.
It's the noticing
But I'll
requirements.
look some more. and
Okay,
Okay.
that'd
If
be
I find
great.
something,
Oh,
I'll.
that would be really good, though, if we
Yes,
could do that.
That would,
Yeah.
that made,
And then we have to double check to make sure that it's not in our planning board procedures.
oh, it
too.
is.
But-
It is in our procedures, and we would have to change our procedures.
The noticing's also in your regulations.
In the regular, yeah.
Right, right, so we have to change it in we may
Right.
have to change it in two places.
No, actually, I think the regulations don't say it, they refer to the procedure, because I went looking through the
Oh,
book.
that's right.
I went looking through the
As
book.
an in general, I would like to change the procedures out of the actual site plan and subdivision regulations, but that's a discussion for a
But yeah,
different day.
so-
Oh,
it-
no, I'm talking about the planning board
Yeah, right.
procedures, not what's in the book.
Your site plan and subdivision regulations reference the Newton Planning Board Policies and Procedures document.
Got you, okay, so it all
That's-
goes back to,
yeah.
okay.
So,
That's-
yeah, it all goes back to the same place.
Okay, all right, so
Probably
that's
only
where we
have
would have to
change
change it.
once,
Okay, great, that's good,
But
okay.
yeah, I'll do a little bit more looking, and you can do some looking, and, because that is something I think that's worth doing.
That is a positive change, presuming that's correct.
Right,
And I don't know yet, so I can't give you my opinion.
okay, sounds good. Okay, anybody else have anything else? I appreciate that. Nope. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned at 7:50.